Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is part 2 of Millennials and Money. My name is Nicole Magnuson.
And I'm Jaclyn Quinn, and we're really excited to talk with you tonight about financial planning and estate planning and all of these exciting things that we need to start thinking about.
Yes. So first, I wanted to just share some disclaimers for kind of both of us. As Jaclyn is an attorney, I'm a financial advisor. We are not your personal attorneys or tax advisors or financial advisors. If you'd like us to be one of those, let us know. But don't take what we say as personal advice. Definitely take it into consideration, though. And I wanted to open up by just introducing myself. Again, I'm Nicole Magnuson. I've been a financial advisor for several years now, and I work with a great team at Point to Point Wealth Planning with Ameriprise. And I'm really excited to be a part of this. And Jaclyn, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. So I'm Jaclyn Quinn. I'm the Deputy Director at the Delaware Community Reinvestment Action Council, or DCRAC. And you may know that last year we opened our nonprofit law firm, DCRAC Law. So we offer legal services on a sliding scale and fixed fee basis. This way it's affordable and accessible.
Great. And to add on to that, our team also, partners with attorneys like Jaclyn or other attorneys elsewhere to kind of talk about your estate plans. We partner with tax professionals to talk about, different strategies to reduce the tax burden as well. But let's just hop right in. So I'm going to start talking about financial planning and different topics around that. So one of the big questions I get is, who needs a financial advisor or who needs a financial plan? Now, this would be for anyone who's goal-driven, anyone who's advisor receptive, or anyone who's serious about their money and how to get to their goals. And those are the kind of people that should start a relationship with a financial advisor. And consultations with most financial advisors to kind of get a feel for who they are and how they work are usually complimentary. And the costs after that are usually very flexible for folks. So I want to jump into some of the common pitfalls that folks fall into, especially millennials starting out. The world is it's like a big ocean full of information. It's full of ideas and strategies that people are throwing at you. Some of the big pitfalls that people fall into are saving 100% of their money into pre-tax places like 403Bs or workplace retirement plans. And that's because, that's what you're told to do. But a lot of the time, we recommend that you put it into different tax buckets. There's kind of 3 tax buckets. There's tax deferred, there's tax free, and then there's taxable. And I can talk about detail after this if you'd like, via social media or however. I don't want to get too in the weeds. But another pitfall that people fall into are making emotionally driven decisions versus logical, educated decisions. Right now the market is very volatile, and some people react to that emotionally, despite, their allocation being set in place or their investments being completely fine. They just react emotionally because of all the media, the way it gets blown up in the press. So, taking emotions out of it is a place where me and Jaclyn come in as, a financial advisor and an attorney to take a step back from the emotions and be a third party to kind of bring it back to reality. Another pitfall is that people ignore the need for protections or insurance, disability insurance, life insurance, if you're older, long-term care. Those are insurances that are super important and can protect not only your assets, but it can protect your family and your income. Another pitfall are that your alignment in your retirement plans or savings is off. It's not in line with your goals. So that's a big pitfall that people make, and it can hurt you down the road. Lastly, there's financial fads. People fall into these, and some people get wrapped into them. You may have heard of some of them. A lot of the day trading, unless it's a full-time job, it can be dangerous depending on how you invest your money. Currency exchanges, real estate, and pyramid schemes. People get wrapped into these. So, having people like me and Jaclyn to reflect on these and throw them out, we can let you know if they're legitimate or not. So those are some of the big pitfalls that I've seen recently. And next, I want to move into student loans and debt. And that's a big thing for millennials. It's a big thing for people that are older than millennials. But consolidating student loans, if you have several, is a huge way to create more cash flow. It's a huge way to reduce your the complexity of all your debts. And we work together with a group that helps us look at all the different options, all the different lenders that they have available to them, to figure out the best way to consolidate loans and free up as much cash flow as possible while still trying to reach your goal of paying off the loans. And in that same vein, public student loan forgiveness is a great thing for the larger federal loans. That's something that is a little bit more complicated. I'm not going to get into the details, but it's something that you should definitely look into if you have those big federal student loans. I had a client actually who consolidated about 6 or 8 different student loans, and she freed up enough cash flow to not only get her a place where she wanted to live with much more space than she thought she could afford, but she also was able to save more towards her goals. So that's just one example of how that can help, with your money and your cash flow. Lastly, I wanted to touch on building a financial foundation. And this is for what I call wealth builders. It's accumulators, people that are building up their money and their finances. You might have your first job, your second job, you're saving into retirement plans. There are kind of 4 different levels that I'd like to talk about. The first level, and you can think of it as a pyramid, like Maslow's hierarchy, if there's any, sociology or psychology people out there. There's the base level of the pyramid, which is covering essentials. And that's where you establish your emergency fund. That's where you can figure out where your money goes. You have a basic budget. Your housing goes into that piece. And you probably shouldn't be spending more than about 30% of your gross income on housing. Your debts are in there, big debts like car loans. Most of us need cars. And the very essential things in life go into that bottom piece. The second level is ensuring lifestyle. And that is where you save 10 to 20% of your income, hopefully. You're going to be contributing to those workplace retirement plans. And you're also going to be saving into maybe a Roth IRA, and you're going to be saving towards your goals. The third one is preparing for the unexpected. And that's where all the insurances fall into. That's where you look at disability insurance and term insurance to help protect what you have going forward. And auto insurance goes into that as well. Lastly is leaving a legacy. That's at the very tip of the pyramid. And leaving a legacy is where you talk about your beneficiary arrangements on all of your accounts. That's bank accounts, that's retirement accounts, that's all of those big accounts that you have, small accounts, it doesn't matter. Have beneficiaries listed if possible. You have your estate plan and guardianship provisions for kids and strategies to donate or leave money to charities. And that bit falls right into what Jaclyn's going to talk about. As she is with DCRAC as an attorney, she's going to talk about estate planning basics and different topics on that. So on to you, Jaclyn. Thanks.
All right, so I'll pick it up. And so much of what Nicole was saying about how insurance is so important now, but also into planning for the future, it all comes into play. Right now, as a younger professional, sometimes there are insurance policies based on income. They might do a health check and see if you have pre-existing conditions and some other health matters. So the sooner you're able to get insurance, if it is the right move for you, the better off you'll be. You might get a better rate and your term might be a little longer for the foreseeable future. Sometimes, so let's talk about estate planning. We mentioned beneficiaries already and power of attorney. So what do those things mean? Now, when we talk about estate planning, there's usually 3 documents that we're referring to. One is, of course, the will. That's the big one that takes over and manages your assets and distribution upon your death. The other 2 documents that are very important are for you to appoint someone during your lifetime, so while you're alive, but may be unable to manage on your own. So the durable power of attorney is a document where you are able to appoint an agent who can come in and take over for financial issues and help you with your financial life in times of incapacity when you might not be able to manage on your own. That financial power of attorney is able to pay bills for you, contact the IRS if there's a payment issue, contact Social Security, get financial records if needed, and make decisions and payments as required. The durable power of attorney is something that, upon your death, that form is essentially ripped up. So that authority ends upon death, and then the will kicks in. So the other important aspect of planning is the Advanced Healthcare Directive. Sometimes it's referred to as the living will, but really with the Advanced Healthcare Directive, we're talking about quite a few different authorities. So by appointing a healthcare agent, you have someone that can assist you with medical decisions, talking with doctors, checking you in and out of the hospital, hiring, firing providers for care, and really making sure that you are getting the appropriate healthcare. The other aspect of the Advanced Healthcare Directive is making some decisions regarding end-of-life treatment and how you would want your agent to make decisions on your behalf, or what kind of treatment you would want. So again, those things are really important to think about now, especially while you're healthy, able to think about it, able to appoint someone who would be able to exercise your best interests and really take care of you in a time of need. One of the benefits of doing the Advanced Healthcare Directive now is that if you were to go for some type of surgical procedure, you would be able to have that document, and you wouldn't have to fill out the additional one that they give you as they're wheeling you into the operating room. I always think that's not a good time for you to make decisions, but it is good to think about it and talk with your loved ones and make sure you have a good plan in place. So with beneficiaries, as Nicole was mentioning, when you have a beneficiary on an account, upon your passing, that beneficiary would receive that asset of yours without it going through the probate process. So, Nicole, could you tell, how long does that usually take if there's a beneficiary and they're going to receive the funds from an estate?
Yeah, so for Ameriprise, it usually depends. If the beneficiary is named and we have some contact information, it can take, as long as it takes to, if there's liquidation that needs to happen, if there are any stocks or bonds or mutual funds within that asset. If it's a liquidation, it takes maybe a week, as long as we get in touch with that beneficiary quickly and get their information. It can take much longer if there are several beneficiaries, or if it is a life insurance payout, an annuity payout, something like that, a different kind of product. But it can take anywhere from pretty short amount of time, surprisingly, to a very long amount of time. We've had people leave 10% of this account to one charity versus another charity and a cousin and a sister. That can get complicated, especially if they're in other states. Yeah.
Well, so you said it could take a week if you have a beneficiary clearly named and you're able to identify that person. And I wanted to really make that point because right now, as we're doing this planning, we think about our loved ones who are left behind. What type of assets of ours are they going to need to access in a relatively short amount of time? Especially if you are the breadwinner, or if you're married and you're the saver, your spouse, maybe the spouse is paying off debt and doesn't exactly have the savings, but would need access to those savings if something were to happen to you. Planning ahead and making sure that that beneficiary is named on the account, by name, so they are clearly recognized. It just makes the funds go directly to that person very quickly. With accounts that don't have any type of beneficiary, then it must go through the probate process. So the probate process is overseen by the Register of Wills office, and ultimately the Court of Chancery is the authority with the Register of Wills office. And there is a statute. So if you don't have a will, the statute would dictate how those funds would be distributed after expenses were paid It can take up to a year, so that's a really long time, especially if someone's waiting and needs that money to survive and pay off what needs to be paid. And there just could be so many questions. So if a claim comes against the estate, now that money could be spent on the claim rather than going directly to the beneficiary. So it's really important to have beneficiaries on accounts. So with a will, I mentioned the power of attorney and you get to choose an agent. With a will, you choose an executor. And the executor is the person who gathers all of the assets after you pass away and then distributes them according to the will. Anything where you have a beneficiary named, it will go directly to those beneficiaries, so it doesn't go into the will then to be distributed. So you can see how it passes separately rather than passing through the will. And that's important, like I said, because of the time frame, because of the claims that could arise. And if you, for instance, leave something to many people, there could be delays if someone won't sign off on a certain waiver or collect the forms that need to be done. So there could be so many things that really throw a wrench into the plans. One of the things I find, so in Delaware, you are able to handwrite your own will as long as it's signed by you, notarized, and you have 2 witnesses. It is technically a valid will. There are some other things that our state requires, such as a self-proving affidavit. So it is best to get some type of assistance with a will, but it's better to have something than not have anything at all. One of the common misconceptions that I see is someone might go ahead and they draft out this very beautifully complicated will where they have this whole plan in place. My sister's going to receive this amount, my nephew and niece will each get this amount, and my neighbor who helps me all the time will receive this. But what in reality they have is someone, maybe they have one account where they're really thinking that it would cover all of these gifts that they're making, but they have a beneficiary on that account. And they don't realize that that money is not going to pass through the will, so there won't be anything there to distribute. So when we do this planning, I usually end up spending a bulk of the time going through what are the assets that you currently have, how are they named, do you have beneficiaries listed? Let's talk about the scheme that your will have and try to mirror that with all of your accounts. And think about what makes the most sense to have as your beneficiaries on all of your accounts. Because we want the assets to pass as quickly as possible with as little room for complication and trouble as we possibly can. And of course, if you have multiple people that you want to leave assets to, and it's important to maybe make sure everyone gets an equal share or to make sure there aren't any conflicts between your beneficiaries, we can do that with planning. So it's important to go through all of that when we're planning. Nicole also mentioned that we include the guardianship appointment in a will. That's really important if you have minors in your care, and you definitely want to make your wishes known through that will. Also, if you have minors, there are some other planning techniques that can be done to ensure that the minors are cared for. It might be a good idea to set up a trust if you want to name a trustee who can make sure milestones are met and pay certain things, and try to make it so with a trust you're able to have a few more strings attached than you would through your will. So if you have a certain idea of how you would want things to be spent and how you would want the kids to be raised, for example, then a trust might be a good idea for you, depending on age.
Yeah, we call trusts, it's a reach beyond the grave. So
yeah.
After you pass, you're still able to control your money. So if you really are a control freak or need to know exactly what's going to happen with your money, a trust is a good way to go, especially if you have a lot of assets that are going to different places.
Yeah. And I find that if you have maybe if you're caring for someone who's disabled or caring for a lot of children, it's really important to have people that you trust that can be the trustees, making sure that these young people won't be receiving a huge chunk of money prior to knowing what to do with it, and you try to make it last for them as long as possible.
Yes, and to piggyback on that, just so everyone's aware, with the COVID legislation that's passed, If there are beneficiaries receiving IRAs or individual retirement accounts, those IRAs now used to be able to be stretched over the lifetime of the beneficiary, or they were able to use the person who passed away's lifetime, depending on how it was passed on. But the inherited IRAs now can only be stretched to 10 years. So say you have, most millennials aren't millionaires right now, but say you have a great aunt that leaves you $1 million in an IRA. Now you have to take $100,000 out every year, which jacks your taxes way up. So we, as financial planners, also take that into account. We look at all the new legislation and say, this IRA that you have, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, that has $1 million in it, we should think about different strategies so that this isn't passed on and hurts the people that you're actually trying to benefit in the long run. So that's just something to keep in mind, is the legislation changes almost every year. The tax law changes. So that's another reason that, having an attorney like Jaclyn or a financial advisor like me and my team is beneficial, because no one person can know all of this stuff. It's really good to have a team at your back to let you know what's going on and help you move forward.
Yeah. And I don't typically see this with my millennial clients, but with older clients, sometimes, if they have, say, a bunch of grandchildren or great grandchildren and they want to leave a gift to each of them, it might be a token amount or, even a substantial gift. But sometimes we're talking about, maybe setting up an account for them now, some type of savings account, if you have the money and it's relatively liquid. Or, giving the gift to them now in their college account while they're still, you could give it to them, they could say thank you, and you can just know you already gave them that gift. And sometimes making moves like that, those moves are actually beneficial to your family presently, and it makes planning easier and in the long run, really. So there are so many things that we go over and we talk about, and every situation is different. But overall, some of the most important things are really to have that team that you trust. Think about who you can appoint as your executor, as your trustee, as your beneficiaries, and think through how you would want things to go. What are going to be the pressing needs? Do you own property? Is there a mortgage? How would that mortgage be paid if you're the primary person who pays the mortgage, with income? And sometimes that's where we talk about insurance and trying to cover that loan. Mm-hmm. So many aspects.
Segue.
Yeah.
Bring up insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as Jaclyn said, insurance is a great way to make sure that your assets or that your liabilities can be paid should something happen to you. So, say, the wife is the breadwinner. She makes, $100,000 a year, and the husband makes 50. And you have 2 kids that you want to send to college. College with inflation is, $200,000 or more for the full college experience, if you're not using financial aid and things like that. So you think 2 kids, that's $400,000 right there. You make a lot of money, your husband makes a lot of money, but having insurance, if something were to happen to you, would help, your husband or wife feel like they can go on and stick with the plan. A lot of our clients, if they want to send their kids through college, we try to make sure that they have insurance that's around that same amount, so that if they do pass away, their kids can still go to college and they can, thank their parents in memory for that gift. And things like that, making sure that if there's a mortgage, you have insurance. Term insurance is perfectly fine. And umbrella insurance is another thing that you can get if you have property. That's just to protect you if there's an accident. And you can get that it's extremely affordable for most people. And like Jaclyn said, as we're millennials, insurance for us, if you're relatively healthy, is very affordable, especially term insurance. Disability insurance is another way to protect your income, which is your biggest asset. You may not realize that, but your ability to earn income is a huge asset that will last, hopefully, your working years. But should something happen to you, aside from a big workers' comp claim. Disability insurance can help cover that gap if something happens, short term and long term. So I don't know if you wanted to touch on any of that, Jaclyn, but I just know that, insurance fits into both of our careers and plans very, very solidly.
Yes. And typically with insurance, you have a beneficiary listed. It's not one of those assets that passes through probate. It really shouldn't. It does in very rare circumstances. And, then there are going to be fees paid on that amount. So again, it's important to have the beneficiary listed and update that on the insurance. I do see with making sure a mortgage can be paid off seems to be like one of the big a popular thing where someone says, okay, I think I should look into insurance. But it's not the right thing for everyone. It's a tool, and it's worth exploring, really, at the end of the day. So it's worth it to mention it and to really look into it if you haven't yet.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had a colleague's client. There was a healthy couple in their 30s, and the husband was a runner, and the wife was home one day, and the husband went out for a run and unfortunately had a horrible heart attack, and it was fatal. And he was very fit. So it was something that is one of those situations where it's like, oh, it won't happen to me. I'm out running. My heart's great. My doctor says I'm healthy. Mm-hmm. But, the wife was eternally grateful to the advisor because she urged them to get insurance in case something does happen. And the wife was able to take care of her children. She worked, but, you have a lot of more bills to cover with one person in the household. So, she was able to avoid poverty with her children because of insurance. And that's just one small example.
Yeah. One of the things that I see a lot, we only have a few minutes, but I just wanted to mention this, is if you own a house, have a mortgage on the property, but you pass away and you want to leave the house to someone, it's really important to think about how that person's going to pay the mortgage, because oftentimes, if that isn't really thought through, sometimes the family can't afford to keep the house and they have to sell it to pay the mortgage if they can't apply for a mortgage on their own or otherwise pay it. So it can be a really sad situation. And if multiple people are left the house, so say 3 siblings each have equal shares, issues come up between maybe it's 2v1 and one wants to keep it, the other 2 want to sell, now who's winning? So unless that one can get a loan and pay everyone off, they might be stuck with the decision to sell it. And there's sentimental value and so many things go into a house, and it was home for all these years with mom. So these are things that we also have to look at. And anytime you own property, you need to have a plan for what's going to happen to it in the end, because property is so valuable. It's important that if someone moves quickly, you don't want a house to sit vacant for a long time or in limbo. Often it'll just end up going to sheriff's sale eventually if a decision can't be made, and then no one is able to realize any gains or benefit from that property.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wanted to leave folks with a couple action steps as well, just quick tangible things that you can do right now, is take a weekend to review your situation, look at all of your expenses, incomes, debts, taxes, insurance, benefits, and get a picture of what you have. And, call me and Jaclyn, we can run through what you have as well. You can start systematically saving. Just save before you see it, out of sight, out of mind. You can also make sure that, like Jaclyn said, if you have property or kids, have some kind of estate plan in place and have beneficiaries listed. You can also make sure that your accounts, like I said, beneficiaries listed by name. Get maximum disability insurance through work if you can. It's really cheap and it protects you. You can also educate yourself on basic financial terminology and estate terminology as well. Investopedia is a great one to look at for financial terms. And check out DCRAC and my website to learn more about what we do, and make sure to follow us on social media. Make sure to follow the Mill Summit. We hope to see you there, and to see, what events DCRAC has, what events Point to Point Wealth Planning has, and what the Millennial Summit has coming up. Do you have anything to add, Jaclyn?
Well, I just wanted to say that there's an awesome session planned for the Millennial Summit around fraud and scams. And we didn't really talk about that here tonight because we know there's going to be an awesome session devoted just to those topics. And I really urge you to tune in because no one is immune from these scams and the fraud that's out there. So it's one of those great tips and a great opportunity to hear from experts in that field.
Absolutely. Thank you for adding that. And we just want to thank everybody for tuning in. We'll try to get back to your questions or comments if you had any, and we look forward to the Mill Summit next week.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Have a great night.
Thanks.